All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Thursday, September 26th at 5:30 p.m. And I would like to call the Personal and Finance Committee to order. Clerk Torado, I believe you have some comments to make before we start our meeting.
Good afternoon, members of the public. For audio quality, we will be muting everyone not speaking by default to maintain good audio quality for yourselves or council and yourselves. If you would like to speak during the meeting, during the public portion, please submit your request in the chat. Directions to do so will be listed in the chat. We ask that you provide your full name and address, as those are required for all speakers at in-person council meetings. If you have any questions, please use the link provided in the Teams chat to submit them. Additionally, if you are called on to speak, please provide your details in the following format. My name is full name and I live at address. You will then be given 5 minutes to speak. Please ensure that you unmute yourselves prior to giving your remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you would mind calling the roll call for the committee, please.
Committee Chair Niskoski,
Present.
Councilmember Vice Chair Warner, Councilmember Lee,
Present.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Present.
Councilmember White, Citizen Member Angela Smith, Citizen Member Ross Dio. 6 present.
Okay, thank you so much. So this evening, we're going to be hearing the budget presentation from Amy Hill from Transpo. This will be her third time, I think, giving the budget presentation. But yes, this will be our 8th of 10 meetings now for the Budget Committee. And just so everybody knows, we're going to probably keep this a pretty short. Normally, it's 2 questions for every council member. I think most of those questions were answered in our last meeting. I do ask that any questions that come forward, if you keep them germane to the presentation and maintain a decorum that is respectful for everyone. So if you'd like to state your name and address, please, and we'll move on.
Good afternoon, Amy Hill, General Manager and CEO for Transpo, with offices at 1401 South Lafayette Boulevard in South Bend. Since we did present this twice on Monday, I will just go through this very quickly and then certainly be happy to answer any questions. So if we go to the next slide. Again, quick overview of the organization. We're currently at 106 employees. We'll touch on the local, state, and federal funding that we receive, and we operate the fixed route and paratransit service for the cities of South Bend and Mishawaka. We touched on our accomplishments over the past year. We are now operating a fleet that's 100% CNG. We're getting ready to implement the short-term network with our Connect Transit plan, so some exciting changes coming that will improve service across our region. Also working on some technology upgrades that have been a long time coming as well to make it easier for our passengers to travel. Multiple ridership programs across the region that continue to improve. We've also really been focused on hiring and planning for our aging workforce in the upcoming years. So really a need for drivers and mechanics and other maintenance employees with our organization. As you can see, the budget is just over $12 million. The local tax revenue is primarily property taxes. State assistance has been flat for 10 years. We actually just had a meeting of our new state association this week, and we met with NDOT to discuss our concerns that that line item has been flat at $45 million for over 10 years, which funds all public transportation agencies in the state. At a bare minimum, if it had been keeping up with inflation, it should be about $68 million now. So that's certainly going to be a focus for the next state legislative session. Federal funding. Formula grants provide for our operating assistance and federal preventative maintenance. As I mentioned earlier this week, passenger fares accounts for a small part of our budget, mainly because the cost of providing that is more than the cash fare of $1 for fixed route and $2 for access. And then lease revenue and advertising revenue have held pretty steady, although advertising is on an upward trend. Expenses, as I say almost every year, wages and benefits makes up the majority of that. Our big focus in our last 2 rounds of contract negotiations was really making sure that we're paying a competitive wage, not only to hire employees, but to keep employees. So that has really assisted with our hiring. We continue to be competitive with our health insurance rates. We're able to provide great coverage through the St. Joe County Health Plan. Really fuel, utilities, other expenses have remained pretty steady. We do operate a very tight budget. It's been a challenge for 2025 to come up with a balanced budget. I think we'll even see bigger challenges heading into 2026. Expenses continue to go up and funding stays flat or goes down. So certainly a challenge as we move forward. Just some quick slides here. You can see the increase in operating expenses over the last several years. The 21, 22, and 23 years are all based on our audited financial statements from Crow, which have been clean audits every year. And again, same thing with labor expenses will continue to go up, especially as we get to full staffing levels. And just some history with our local income tax. We did have a downward swing a couple years ago. That has now kind of rebuilt itself and continues to be important funding for our organization. I can't mention funding enough. It's always a challenge, both on the local, state, and federal level. So we can continue to advocate for investing in public transportation. And then again, increasing expenses and operational and capital costs. Our paratransit fleet is eligible for replacement currently. Those vehicles have more than doubled in cost the last couple of years. So we're replacing those at a much slower rate. So that's a challenge. And then rising insurance costs from property and casualty insurance continues to increase. Ridership is still rebuilding from COVID. So far, we're trending up 15% from last year. We're hoping we can get back to that 1.5 million mark and continue to build on that. We do often receive requests for additional service. That certainly came out during our Connect Transit Plan planning process. We know we need additional service on Saturdays and to operate service on Sundays, but that all comes down to funding. And while we're implementing our short-term budget neutral plan this year, we're still working on ways to start implementing the longer 10-range plan to improve service across the region. Again, Connect Transit Plan, if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at that, I know many council members participated in that planning process, for which we're grateful. All that information is available on the website. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions as well. And as we get closer to that launch date, we'll be releasing a lot more information as well. So, and again, we're always hiring. So if you know anybody looking for a job, feel free to send them our way. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you so much again for that presentation. Appreciate your time this evening, Amy, very much. So I'll come back here to the committee members. Any questions? Angela Smith. These are our two citizen members on our committee.
Thank you. I didn't make it Monday night, and we were in a hurry on Monday afternoon, so I'll ask questions that I thought of then. You mentioned that this is, and I apologize if other council members asked this on Monday night, but you mentioned that this was the first, 100% of the fixed route fleet is now CNG.
Correct.
Do you have any way of quantifying any kind of savings that have come from that switch?
Sure, it's been pretty significant. In fuel alone, we save about $1 a gallon per gas. The maintenance of the vehicles has remained about the same. Obviously, having newer vehicles are less expensive to maintain than older vehicles. However, there are some additional requirements with compressed natural gas, such as there's a fire suppression system on board. So there's some additional inspections. Overall, though, they're much more cost efficient to operate.
That's great. Thanks for that information. And this is just mostly a curiosity thing. I had a friend take the free shuttle to Notre Dame. Is that this past weekend? Is that reimbursed by the university, or how are those costs?
So no, actually Notre Dame is not involved in that, other than helping us coordinate where we drop off. So our game day express route is actually fully funded by our downtown partners. So Visit South Bend Mishawaka pays the majority of that. And then the Aloft Hotel, Doubletree, Courtyard, and Century Center all contribute. So it is done at 100% no cost to Transpo. And so it's free and open to the public.
It was very appreciated. So thank you.
It's good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Council? Is it okay to? Okay, go ahead, Rox.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Two quick questions. Where are you in terms of staffing, and has retention been a problem?
So in terms of staffing right now, we have about 6 full-time fixed route operator positions open, 2 full-time of our access paratransit drivers. We just held a pop-up maintenance employment open house a couple weeks ago. And from that, we are filling 2 mechanics positions, which mechanics have been a problem across industries finding, along with several service line employees. So we're getting closer to be filling staff. We just had a training class of 3 drivers finish. However, in the meantime, we also lost 3 drivers, some due to disciplinary issues, other to, we have an aging workforce, so we have a lot of upcoming retirements. we're trying to overhire to account for that. So we're doing much better than a lot of other agencies. Indigo in Indianapolis is down 100 mechanics. Obviously, they're a much larger system, but we're getting better, and we're, for quite some time, we were occasionally missing trips because of staffing shortages, and that has mostly resolved itself now. So,
Retention is not an issue once people have been hired.
I would say retention has decreased a little bit because if you look at it, and I think you've seen this across a lot of industries, we have so many employees that have been with us 20, 30, 40 years. You don't see that now. So that's really one of the things that we're working on, looking at some apprentice programs for both drivers and mechanics to get them in and keep them. Our current collective bargaining agreement does include a retention bonus that's paid out annually. So once they come in, they do have that incentive. So we've been trying to add that added incentive. I think overall, we're faring better than most when it comes to retention.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, you had a question?
Mr. Deal stole my questions. But what are we doing to hire entry-level mechanics or entry-level drivers or to get people who may not totally have all those skills but are interested?
Sure.
What ways are we?
So this was actually a topic at our state association meeting this week. Unfortunately, in the state of Indiana, you have to be 21 to obtain a commercial driver's license with passenger endorsements. We wish it would be 18 because we'd love to get those coming right out of high school that are looking at trades or other opportunities, and maybe a four-year college is not right for them, or maybe they want to go to school part-time and work part-time. So that would be helpful if the state would change some of their regulations. As far as once you are 21, we will hire you without a commercial driver's license. You need to be able to obtain your permit, and then we will actually train you to get your CDL. So we are fully licensed to do that. The bipartisan infrastructure bill created a lot of additional requirements for people and organizations to be qualified to train to get your CDL, but we are licensed and authorized to do that. We have an on-site commercial driver's course, so we'll help them do that. It's the same thing with mechanics. If you're interested in that, we can start you on our service line, which is cleaning and fueling our buses. You still need to obtain your CDL, but then we'll help you move into the role of a mechanic. Your mechanic entry level is a Class C, move up to a B and an A. So there are those advancement opportunities once you get in the door.
Then my other is really a statement. Amy, you do a great job every time you present, and I've heard it 3 times. You do a great job at running Transpo and what it does for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And we have a great team. We have a great executive team. Chris Kubizak, our controller, obviously spends a lot of time each year putting together the budget. He and I work very closely to that. And then certainly our board of directors, of which Sheila and Bianca both serve on now, really supportive and help us at kind of that higher level governance level. So we've got a great team in place.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, we're going to go to the.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation again. And yes, you do have a wonderful team. She runs a tight ship during those board meetings too, everything, boom. But yes, you do provide a wonderful service for our community. And I think we're going to try those buses for the Notre Dame game this weekend. I heard it's a great way to get down to the stadium and back.
Easy.
Yeah. Okay, so there's no other questions. We're going to open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? I see no one in the chambers. I see no one online at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I don't believe I missed anybody. Is that correct, Matthew? Okay. So we're going to close the public hearing, come back if there's no other statements to be made by the council members. Councilmember White, do you have anything? Our esteemed council, longest serving member on the council. Okay.
I've heard nothing but positive feedback, especially from my brother who's a bus driver. Okay, you can keep him, okay? No, thank you so much. Thank you.
Angela, you'd like to make a
I just
comment?
wanted to say thank you again, and I really wish that there was a way that we can continue to kind of destigmatize the public transportation. I've noticed a lot more and I think I'm out maybe on routes more a little bit now than I used to be, but I see a lot of people waiting at the bus stops. Um, and in talking to people, I still get the whole perception of, oh, that's just for them, not for us kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so I would love to find ways for the city to help promote this as more than just people who can't afford their own transportation options. Because I think things like the shuttle on Saturdays is a great way to highlight what you do. And some of the other events where Transpo offers shuttles, I think that's a great opportunity for people to see how this can be a valuable service, not just for people who can't afford their own cars. So
And I think there's an opening on the Transpo board. Just saying. Okay, with all of that being said, looks like there's no comments. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the Personal and Finance meeting. Thank you everyone for coming. Chris, Amy, thank you again for your time and the presentation. Thank you. Oh, that's it.
We have no question.
Oh, yeah, the budget wrap up. Okay, is there any, this is the budget wrap up, kind of. We still have one more presentation from Human Rights. And that has been moved to October the 3rd. And we're going to hear them first, and then after we hear, that presentation, go straight into the council working session. That will be our official last meeting for the budget before the vote on the 14th. And thank you for reminding me. I was so excited to get done with the presentation here. So is there any last minute questions that anyone has in reference to the budget wrap up? And we also will be addressing those on the 3rd as well. Rachel Tomas Morgan.
Thank you,
And
Chair.
I see our city controller is here as well. Thank you for coming. And Daryl there in the back. Everybody say hi.
This isn't a question, just a reminder. I did ask some questions during the VPA session. I don't believe we received those responses. And if they did and were posted, I apologize. That we received those.
I'll follow up and I'll make sure those get to you guys and get posted.
Great. Thank you.
So I would like to know, can you just give me a general, what the budget, how's the, how's the budget? What do you think about the budget?
No,
Are
I
we
think,
all right with the budget, or we get these, people that say we're in the red, and so can you just give a general, talk about our budget?
no, I think this year, the upcoming budget for 2025, I think it's in a good place. We've decreased the budget from previous years. I think last year was around 16. Budget deficit about 16 million. The year before that, I think it was around 13 million. And I think for 2023, we ended up with a surplus, or 2022 ended up with a surplus. But then this year, the budgeted deficit is about 10.8. So we are making improvements with the budget, getting it back down to being closer to a more balanced budget. The only issue, as we talked on Monday, part of the problem that we have, or the projection of the revenues, is not, sometimes we think we may get more, but it actually, we have a small amount come in. But also increased costs, due to inflation, even though that's starting to stabilize. And there are additional programs that, that we continue to fund that may cause us that make tough decisions on continuing to fund those if we want to try to get back to that balanced budget each year. So, but all in all, the city's finances, strong position. We have plenty of cash, or as I would say, cushion, so that if we were to incur a deficit, there is that that cushion that, it doesn't really hurt the city's financial position.
Okay, well, thank you. So I want you to know, just in case I might have to ask you that again next week.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I believe that we are over the reserve requirements. So we have additional funds in reference to the reserve requirements. So the deficit budget that you have will actually would be able to be realized within those overages of the 50% reserve requirement.
Correct.
Okay. Um, Councilmember White? Yeah, which will continue to increase as well, I believe, yeah.
This is a question continues with the budget. I think a lot of our citizens, they don't understand our budget, and they think, well, that we don't have a balanced budget. They don't understand, the deficit and how all that works. But do you think that we'll get to a point that we would not have to pull from the reserves?
We haven't had to pull from reserves.
Okay.
So,
So we've never pulled from reserves.
no.
So we really, based on the income that we get, that we may not have projected, but it's higher than that. That covers everything. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question, we have developed a lot of initiatives, and a lot of that was through the American Rescue Funds. And so I don't know if there's any plans to sustain those initiatives, or what happens when the funding's no longer there.
I think that's the tough questions that, we have to ask and come to an answer for.
Okay.
A lot of those are, have been good programs for the community. It's just, that's one of those things we have to really sit down and, either try to find other funding sources or,
Just don't have them.
or you do away with them. I don't know if anybody wants to raise taxes, but that's just, that, right. So, I think, it's a trade-off, do you raise taxes to continue to fund those programs or find some other alternative revenue source to help fund that?
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's all I have.
Thank you for all your work this season. I had a couple questions going back to the original presentation. And again, I wasn't here Monday night, so I apologize if this was covered. When that information was shared with us in the budget kickoff, and it talks about how we're budgeting a deficit, but every year we've realized a surplus. That surplus number, does that include monies that are encumbered to be spent still, or is that a true surplus?
Well, based on actuals. So at the end of the year, there's usually budget rolled over. So fund, like you said, funds that were encumbered, if not spent, just get rolled over into the following year. So it's based on an actual.
So it's not included in the surplus. So that surplus might be lower than it actually is, or?
Probably, yes. For encumbered funds, yes. If encumbered funds were included, that number does come down.
Okay. Would there be a way to get some of those numbers without the encumbrance, or with the encumbrances, I mean, so that we can see what the more true
It's possible.
reporting is? Okay. I was just curious, like how close we are to the actual number, because if we have a huge surplus, then we're not fully serving our residents by offering all the programs we should. But if that's really being encumbered in programs that they're going to see in the future, that's a different story. So I'm just curious, and that might be something that would be helpful to share with the public too. Like they may not understand that even though those funds were budgeted, we met the budget with our revenues, and we're going to hold on to that program so we can offer additional services the next year or whatever sometimes. So that's something that I don't know if the general public, somebody who hasn't worked there, understands that we roll this stuff forward.
Well, and then when you do a deficit budget, then
looks
everybody's
scary.
like, they're
money.
scary, and
Yeah.
it's like, you don't know what you're doing. I've heard those comments from people, which is not true. And the American Rescue Funds that were one-time dollars that we'll probably never see in our generation again. There was discussion even then that when those funds were gone, and if there weren't additional funds to support that, that those programs would drop off. Now that, of course, warrants a different conversation because the mayor, as we know, sets the budget. And we, as council members, have input in on that budget as well as residents. And if we know certain programs are working, but where do you get the money? Do you run a deficit? And then we go back to this whole conversation again. So it's always a little bit of, it's always challenging at budget time. But I understand what you're saying if we are budgeting over. But I think that varies every year.
Yeah.
If I remember some of the numbers I looked at, it could have been like 3.5 million, I think, and one was like 5. But estimating your revenues coming in from property taxes is always a challenge too.
Yes,
which is
correct.
why this budget that they have, this is always an estimate, right? These numbers are not like, this is how I would balance, they say you should, like, you balance your checkbook or run a business, but city government is a little bit different because those revenue streams that come in are all over the place. So,
So I would, it's definitely tough because basically when we start our budget process, we're looking at 18 months of
Mhm.
how we budget out. And if you can pinpoint how those 18 months can go, please, come on over. I'll take it because you'll be an asset to our department. But that's the challenge each year, is trying to budget 18 months out. And especially with the revenues, with our local income tax, so our local income tax revenues has a 2-year lag on the effect. So um, while last year we had a pretty big jump in revenues that we received because they came from 2021, 2022 collections. This year, it actually just kind of remained flat or decreased a little bit because now from collections in 2023. So, that's kind of, and we don't know like what the effect was 2 years ago. So it's kind of hard for us to plan for that each year. So, that's not a science, but it's somewhat of an art. They're trying to project this, but
Well, and I don't think people realize too, like all of the assessment issues at the county, how much
Mhm.
that impacts us. Because when they over assess so dramatically and people automatically appeal, as opposed to if somebody was just slightly over, they may not say anything and they're like, oh yeah, my property taxes went up, but like, mine went up 200%, my assessment did. And so like, then of course I'm going to appeal it, but otherwise that if it was a normal one. So I don't even know if, like, again, it's such a complicated process. And that's why I said I appreciate all you guys do because that's not an easy thing to work through. So this has been eye-opening too, being on the committee. So I appreciated the opportunity.
thank you for serving, Councilmember Lee. And then I know Miss White had another question as well. And Rachel, you said, you don't, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Willis, for your willingness to help us understand this. I know that for the average person, it's very easy for people to say the word deficit and think negative. So I'm always one who's trying to look at how do it make sense. So, and help me if this analogy is okay. Is it like, say for instance, in our checking account we have $100, but in our savings we have $1,000. So even if we spend over the $100, we have enough to cover any debts that would happen. And so though we've spent this, we still have enough to cover it. So um, you're still in good shape.
correct. Yeah. It's a good way to say
Does
it.
that make sense? Okay. $500. You have $500 and you spend,
You have backup, basically. Yeah,
you have backup. And so as a person who has an everyday budget, even if you overspend, but you got savings to back it up, though you overspent, it's covered.
correct.
And so you're not in crisis. That makes sense? That's why you help me out.
I just laugh. I'm just smiling to myself. It makes sense.
Okay.
You know what they're gonna say, then you need to live and stay within your budget. I'm just, I think that the analogy is good, but maybe how we could fix it,
Yeah, I
But I
think we have,
understand what you're saying.
we have to find a way to make the public understand so they don't think that somebody is not being honest or, all of these things that are being proposed in the budget helps to make our city better, helps to raise the quality of life, helps attract businesses to our community. And right now we are doing all of the things that need to happen in order for our city to be successful. So um, I think that maybe that's a focus of helping people understand it's not what people it appears to be, but we're in good shape as a city.
It's like being a tip-based employee.
Mhm.
It's like being an employee where you gotta you know what your base is, but you don't know what your tips are gonna be. You think you know on average what your tips are gonna be, and you kind of budget your month based on that, but if you have a down month, you can cover it.
Mhm.
Very good. All right. Better analogy.
Okay, any other
Okay,
questions?
my last
Sir Council?
question is, or maybe I want to make sure I have the clear understanding. When we build our budget, the caps are included that within the budget.
For employees,
For,
You-
not only the salaries, okay? The budget's based on also the caps for all the, employees,
Mhm.
but very few of our employees are at that level, correct?
correct?
So those are funds that we can also,
That's
It's
where
still
you,
part.
so that's where this.
that's where that
Your savings come
mhm,
from.
savings come from too.
So when we talk about the budgeted deficit,
Mhm.
like I think the mayor spoke, Monday evening, and then like we spoke before, just, you can sometimes account for, 4 to 5 million there
Right
of
there.
just salary expenses not being, expensed out
Mhm.
because not everybody's paid at their cap.
Yeah. So that's something else too. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, any other questions from anyone?
Just one last comment. The reason I asked, and I say I will probably ask you that again, is because you work real hard at what you do, and then to have someone that want to balance the budget their way. So what I'm getting at is I like what you're doing. Continue your good work, and you can get up and give an explanation of what you're doing and how we're doing, and letting people know that the city's not in the red like we're hearing, okay? So that's what we need to do. We need to put that out there so that the other people that balance the budget know the real truth. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, so there are. So I actually checked those links today and Tirado sent them to me. So if you go onto the council page and there's like a bar that says the council budget or 2025, read the 2025 budget. It's something like that, but it's right under the council pictures. That will take you into the Laserfish, and that will take you into the budget presentations that are in there. I had someone ask about that, about the handouts. I don't think they looked at the right link, but it's all on there. You can go into the Build the Budget link and get to the Laserfish there and see all the budget presentations, the dates, the notices. Those are in there too. Mhm. Yep. Yeah, and some of them have all been sent yet. I don't know that they've all been, so not all of them have replied. Clerk Toronto has followed up with some of them. So it's not like we can't put something in there if they haven't replied yet, but all the questions, and those questions are the ones that have not been, that were not asked on the floor. So, or in other words, answered. So these are ones where, hey, Kyle, could you get back to me on X, Y, or Z? Or with, I think one of them had to do with the salaries and how many were at the cap. So some of those questions have not yet been answered, but when they do, they come in, and I think Matthew is the one who's downloading them in there. So everything should be in there. It's up to date. I kind of checked today. Also the build the budget feedback for 2025, that was released. I just got that yesterday, and that's on the build the budget site as well. So, and it looks like, can anybody guess what the number one thing is that residents want? It's streets, housing, curb and sidewalks improvements, safer communities, investment and creation of opportunities, especially for our youth. Those are the top five, and they're very consistent year over year. So I do have, just wanted to put that out there for everybody. All those links are good. And I see we have Miss Sue Kissam here that has her hand up. Sue, would you like to go ahead and state your name and address for the record and ask your question?
Sue Custom, 422 Kennedy Drive.
Hmm.
My question remains the same. There's no numbers to look at. The annual comprehensive financial report hasn't been released. It should have been released in February. Even the adopted budget for 2024 isn't on there. The monthly reports that have a lot of live key metrics aren't there. So, you know, it just hasn't been very transparent. And it's not how a public forum should be run, where the numbers are hidden from people. And I do understand deficits. I've been looking at this budget for over 15 years. I get it. But you got $100 in your checking account. That's what you should spend. You shouldn't keep dropping into the savings and the cash reserves. You guys need to do better. It's the, it's combined, it's over Elkhart, Mishawaka, and Fort Wayne combined. I mean, there are things you can cut. There are things that we can keep our property taxes lower and spend the taxpayers' money more wisely. You can try and spin it however you want, but you guys are spending too much and you're not giving the numbers to the public. So nothing's transparent.
Thank you for your comments. And I believe that we are disclosing everything on our, in the Laserfish and on the website that we get in the
No, it's not in the
presentation.
Laserfish. I've
Yes,
looked.
I just checked today, Miss Kissam. It's there.
Well, when was it uploaded? Because I got to tell you, it wasn't there. And
Well,
it should have been there long before this budget
I think
process
you were
started.
looking at the wrong link is what my guess would be. Because I looked at it from two different sites and I was able to locate the information. As far as the ACFR 2023, I believe that we had replied to you before that there were some errors that were found in the way that they were importing into the reports. That was due to a new software that was put in place a couple years ago. You had raised a question. They went in, this was earlier this year. When they went to find that, they discovered there was some issues. And Kyle, I believe, has said this before, that they are looking for through literally thousands of lines of data. I believe, Mr. Willis, you said that you guys are just about there with getting those reports done.
So the monthly reports, we are getting back close to having those reposted after we've had the audit conducted. So we're getting close back to having those back on the website. The audit is with the auditors now doing their final review. As we had to do some cleanup from previous years that caused issues in the auditing of the 2023 financials. So not from a lack of trying, but it was just some things that were done incorrectly in prior years that we're having to clean up this year and took way longer than expected. The annual financial report that is due at the end of February or the beginning of March each year is filed, was filed with the DOGF. I think the report may not be on the website, but it was filed with the DOGF with the state earlier this year.
And I looked at the budgets where you go into the financials and it shows the budgets for 23, 24. And I did see that 23 was not, but it looks like this audit is finishing and then you'll be able to place those in the Laserfish folder under that year as well.
Correct.
And then moving forward into next year, since these mistakes were discovered, the formulas, I think they were look at recalculating to ensure all the data was imported correctly into these reports. Will we be able to expect this to all be done in a timely manner next year?
Correct. Honestly, once we get everything back reposted, they should be issued timely each month. The goal is honestly is not to have to export the information out of our system and then into an Excel document, because that's where the issues lie. From the human aspect, transferring the data to the Excel file, rather just print, produce the report from the system that we know that is reliable and not have the risk of data being incorrectly transferred in. So.
Okay. And then on the build the budget, they had the books, the budget books that were produced, and I noticed 24 wasn't in there, and you said that was due to some formatting. Is that going to be corrected? Because
Yes.
that was nice to be able to look at, and I know, and I did look up due to some of the questions Ms. Kissam sent.
Yep. So the
and
the budget model that was used in prior years to build the budget book in the long story short, it just kept crashing on us last year. So a new model had to be built like on the fly. And the pages that go into building the budget book, it just, we did not having the staff to actually do that. And the person that created all that is no longer here. So the intention is to take the current model now and format it to produce the 2025 budget book for next year. Just for 2024, we were not able to produce that given the circumstances last year.
And you have someone outside that'll be helping you through
Yes.
that process so that you can generate those reports then on another yearly basis as was done before, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful. I do not see anybody else here for any questions. I do not see anybody else virtually. So I would like to thank everybody tonight. We only have a couple more to go and we'll be wrapping up the budget. So thank you, everyone, and I'm going to adjourn the Personnel and Finance. Thank you, Mr. Willis, for being here. Daryl, nice seeing you again. Thank you for keeping us safe, sir. Have a good night.